Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 42 of Rise Up, the podcast. I'm here with your host, Greg B. Screnlin, and we have a very special guest this weekend, Hutton Jackson. We'll be talking about the recap from the quarterfinals. We'll talk about some of the awards that took place over last weekend, and we'll give a good preview of the semifinals. Some great lacrosse happened last weekend, but before we dive into that, let's let Hutton introduce himself to our listeners, a new guest this week. We're very pleased to have him. He's going to have some sharp picks for us coming up in the semifinals. But Hutton, the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Appreciate Dan Newbert, reaching out. Actually, kind of gotten my start into betting by betting on lacrosse. Me and Dan used to do Bet on Lacrosse podcast. We occasionally do like a Twitter space, but did that in 2021. Fell in love with betting after that, and then quickly after that decided to move on to a betting company in terms of my full-time job. I'm a producer there, so I'm not as sharp in terms of any of the other sports. I do give out my lacrosse picks, but don't tail me on anything else, I'd say. But yeah, I'm a video producer there. Still try to do some stuff with Pro Lacrosse Talk, which was kind of how I got into the lacrosse space with my colleague Adam Moore. But kind of been on hiatus with the podcast with that, just been too busy. But love still talking lacrosse betting and watching the PLL, so I've been getting my fix betting-wise.
Yeah, it's funny, Hutton. The first off, we were talking about before we got on the air. Like, Action Network is awesome. If you're into gambling at all, if you're into betting, definitely check out Action Network. But secondly, that's where when I first retired, I think over the pandemic, we did like a Beast Bets segment. I remember RJ came to me from the league and was like, "Yo, you want to do Beast Bets?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know anything about betting." I didn't know. I was like, "What's plus minus 10?" I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing with all this." And then, fast forward now, because of the PLL and the connection it had with DraftKings originally and now all the other stuff, I love it. But I set a limit on myself. Like, I don't want to get obsessed with it, but it is a lot of fun, man. It makes Sibes, what would you say percentage-wise? How many PLL, I don't want to say fans, but how many followers of the PLL watch the games compared to how many actually just check their DraftKings accounts to see how the bets are going?
I think people watch. I'd say so, right?
I would say
I'll tell you, I know a lot of adults out here, like in Westchester and stuff. They literally will bet and then they will check the website to see how the bets are going.
I'll say that I think the Friday night games is the ones that I watch the most.
Oh yeah.
If it's a Saturday day or Sunday day, chances are I'm at the beach or playing golf. I'm not going to be planted on the couch watching the games, which is a bummer. But I mean, I've said it before. The PL does a great job with the YouTube highlights. They're like 20-minute highlights, which is almost as long as the game. So you can consume.
I find most of the people arguing on Instagram don't actually watch the games. They just look at a highlight and then they all argue about it.
That's probably true.
Me included, probably. But yeah.
which is a big reason why I'm rarely on Twitter anymore, because it's become an infestation of idiots.
And Elon tries to break it every week too with some other update.
Yeah. Hey guys, you got to pay for likes now. Talk to you later.
With that being said, let's jump right into these quarterfinal games. I know we missed last week's episode. Greg was on a well-deserved vacation with the fam. Was bothered a little bit, but he still enjoyed his time. I was away myself too. Busy. Life gets in the way sometimes. But we're back here. We're finishing the season strong, and we're going to give a great recap of these quarterfinal games. And I think generally, I love to hear what you guys have to say about it. I was expecting some closer games, and I really don't think we had any of them this quarterfinals. We did have upsets, right, with the Redwoods. I guess technically they were an upset. But, I'd love to hear what you guys think about the games in general, the product of the quarterfinal games.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw was the prevent was undefeated. So Cannons were just standing up and backing up. There's a couple times Trevor won a clamp or didn't win it cleanly, and the Cannons player was already like 4 yards back, and he was just like literally picking up and scooping it as if he won like on a false start. So the Cannons were doing what I expect the Water Dogs. This is going to be a really weird semifinal. but neither team's going to want to win a face-off. They're both going to kind of stare blankly at the ball, and they're both phenomenal at 20 seconds worth of hard defense and then counter transition. And both of those teams have made a living on the counter transition after initially giving up the face-off. So I'm going to be fascinated to see what happens. The last time the Water Dogs and Cannons played each other, the Water Dogs, Courier went like 21 for 22 on face-offs, and the Water Dogs actually lost. So I wonder if that's going to play into what they do. Now, in this Cannons Atlas game, it was never close. The Cannons ran away with it. They were energized. They are playing like a team that is absolutely hell-bent on winning this thing. And, I mean, the amount of juice you see going through that roster right now, the amount of confidence in each other, it should frighten the shit out of the rest of the league right now.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about that. I mean, the Cannons just, their ball movement is so good, and it's crazy too to think that like they can get into a shootout with any team. Like you think about like a team like the Archers, high-powered offense, Water Dogs, high-powered offense. Like their defense has been playing really, really well, but they don't even really need to play well on defense when they're putting up 20 points. I mean, the Atlas, like obviously the defense has been really bad this year, but like just look at Kincannon's numbers. Like even though he obviously hasn't been doing too great, he actually was doing decent the past couple weeks, and they just shelled him this past week. And I think that just goes to say like their ball placement, like they take high quality shots, and they're really good too at using the entirety of the shot clock. Like they'll get some quality looks throughout the shot clock, and then they'll still bury one, with 2 or 3 seconds left in the shot clock too, which I think also makes them like extra dangerous. They don't really punt on a lot of possessions, and when they are shooting, like they're scoring, they have a knack for finding the net. It helps when you have guys like Marcus Holman, Ryan Drenner, like high percentage shooters. But I think the ball movement is just like they can beat any team in the league. Like, and I think that's what makes them scary the most is if they want to get into a rock fight with you, like. I think they can, but any team that's going to try to outrun and gun them, they're just not going to be able to.
Your goalie needs to show up and play absolutely awesome to beat the Cannons.
Yep.
And that's what's going to make the second round so interesting.
Yeah. You both bring up great points. And I think the first, gripe I have, or at least with myself, honestly, is I think the last 4 weeks I bet the Atlas, either money line or plus the points. And they were the last leg of my parlay this weekend at plus 2.5, and I sprinkled a little on the money line by itself too, and they just let me down again. And it's tough to see with how great of players they have on their team. Just it was definitely a disappointing season for them. Pressler, first-year coach, he's super competitive, super decorated coach. I'm sure he's kind of scratching his head because, the same reason why a lot of people are. The reason why they're losing breaks my brain. They're winning almost 100% of faceoffs.
Besides, look, you and I both know exactly why the Atlas weren't good this year. They got totally effed by the faceoff rule.
Yeah.
If they had the faceoff rule was the same as last year, this team is way more competitive this year. I mean, so here's an example, right? Trevor goes 30 for 30 freaking every game against long poles. That means that they're getting a 30-second possession, which is really kind of like a 20-second possession, right? Because the Atlas, regardless of what they did, they were damned if they did, damned if they didn't. If they put 2 offensive middies out there and they don't score right away, they get counter-transitioned and scored on. If they put a pole out there and a shorty, they don't have enough time to actually score. So unless Trevor does a spin move, reverse clamp, and takes it and scores, they had like a 20-second possession, then immediately coming back the other way, a 52-second possession. So that means 30 times a game, they had a possession that was 30 seconds less than the other team. Their time of possession over the course of the year was less than their opponents, even though they went almost 80% on faceoffs. That is ridiculous. So They were completely effed. I'm not going to say they were going to win this thing, Sibes, but dude, they got totally effed by this rule.
No, I hear you.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. I'll play devil's advocate a little bit though. Like I do think the rule really screwed them over. I mean, you have the best faceoff guy in the league, MVP last year, and then all of a sudden, faceoffs just don't matter as much. But you look at a team, but you look at a team like the Archers that were able to overcome that, and that's where I scratch my head with this Atlas offense is they could just never put it together. Like they would turn the ball over so much, and it'd be like stupid turnovers too, like ones that like you're like missing catches and stuff. And that's where you look at the Archers. Like the Archers overcame that because they were able to maximize those 32-second shot clock opportunities. And sure, they're not ideal. Like I'm with you. Like I think the face off, they went way too far with this rule, and I hope they tweak it a little bit this offseason. Like, at least meet in the middle at like 40, 45 seconds. But the Atlas on paper, their offense still with Jeff Teat, Eric Law. I mean, you look at those
Chris
guys like
Gray.
Chris Gray,
Yeah.
those guys should still be able to function with the 32-second shot clock. But I think their midfield depth was really telling, because you'd see like Costabile and Dennis Williams as the team, they take bad shots, in that 32-second shot clock. And I think that's where they kind of hurt them. And then you look on the other side, like who thought that the team that drafted 2 defenders first overall and had a decent defense last year would be last in the league. But they just got killed on transition defense like every game. And I'm with you, Dan. Like every week, I'm like, Atlas might put it together this week or whatever. Like I think they can cover. Like I think the defense is going to get it together, and they just never did. Like the same story every week is 2 or 3 transition goals, and you're just scratching your head like, how do they let that up every time?
I think, Hutton, you're right. I think the big difference between the Archers and the Atlas, one is the Archers were winning faceoffs at almost like 15 to 20% higher clip overall throughout the season. But I just think the Archers are just a better, both offensively and defensively, transition team. They can get the ball up the field in an attackman stick very quickly. And I think it's part of their genetic makeup on that offense of, doesn't matter who has the ball in their stick, they can make a blind pass, and it doesn't matter who's cutting, they can catch and score right away. Yeah. Whereas I feel like you said, the depth of the Atlas isn't what the Archers have. So, the Archers get back on D better in transition, and they get the ball up the field so fast. Other than maybe the Water Dogs, probably the fastest in the league.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on to the next game, I will say, you mentioned it, Hutton, the Cannons. I think, biggest turnaround team of the year. We'll get into the awards later on the show, but Coach Holman wins Coach of the Year. There's a lot of awards, but there isn't, a most improved player award. If there was, it'd be Asher Nolting. His sophomore season in pros this year has been really fun to watch, and he's definitely really come into his own. And I think we said, at the beginning of the season, we talked about what this team was going to look like without Lyle. And I think, Greg and Scotty, who have had experience with Coach Holman, they knew his brand of lacrosse. They knew it was ball movement. And they said, it wouldn't affect the Cannons losing Lyle as much as maybe the common fan might think. And, I mean, it's proven to be true.
Yeah, poor Dukes, man. Dukes on Twitter got crucified because he was trying to say this, and maybe he didn't articulate it that well, but also because Lax Twitter is filled with swamp rats. But, he was if you know lacrosse, you understand what he was saying. That this offense with this head coach is not designed to have the ball sit in one person's stick and make one decision. And I think, they benefited almost from this specific offense and this personnel because Asher Nolting absolutely took off because the ball never died in anyone's stick. And when it did die in Asher's stick, it's because there was a mismatch, and he just immediately... One of the things that always drove me crazy in professional lacrosse is when attackmen who are top 1% in the world don't just catch and go right away. They would catch, drift around, kill the shot clock in the back, and then go. And I'm not saying Lyle does that, but I'm saying Asher did the opposite of what some guys do. He catches the ball, and in his second year, he was so good at making decisions right away and attacking what he had, and he's taking what it's given to him. That's what I love about Asher. He doesn't force anything. It always looks natural in the flow of the offense, and it's a huge credit to the Coach of the Year, Holman. It's funny, Sibes, remember when we did the draft preview and we were talking about the 2 job openings in this league, and one looked way better than the other, right? It was like Atlas, first in the league last year in the regular season. They have 3 number 1 picks coming up. The Cannons have nothing. They were dead last in the league. And what Holman did in 1 year is absolutely insane.
Yeah,
and kudos to him.
Great point. Well, with that being said, let's move on to the next game. I know we went a little bit out of order, but we'll go down the way the bracket's set up on the PLL website. The 3 seed versus the 6 seed was the Water Dogs versus the Whip Snakes. I saw today that this is the first time in the PL history the Whip Snakes will not be involved in the semifinal weekend. Is the dynasty over here for the Whip Snakes? Or what do we think here? The Water Dogs, they are the defending champs. They're the 3 seed. They're the defending champs. They're still, a great team. I think you could see towards the end of the game in some of the press conference clips after the game, how just bummed some of these veterans on the Whip Snakes who've been playing together for so long really were. And it was definitely tough to see. But, they fought hard. It was the closest game of the weekend. And you knew the Whip Snakes weren't going to give it up easy. And, fun game to watch. Water Dogs win 15-12. What did you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I could see. Well, first off, you're bummed because you're so used to success that you feel like you failed somehow. And this proves once again, like when I was playing over the course of my career, I used to be so devastated by losing, right? When I was in high school, we never had a season where we lost more than 2 games in a season. I go to Penn State before it was Tambroni's Penn State, and I had to get used to losing. And then I played in the pros, and I had to get used to losing. But as you go through each year, you start to realize, holy shit, teams that won, like the Whip Snakes, right? A lot of those guys on that team have 2 or 3 rings. They're devastated right now because they don't care about last season, and that's what being an elite level athlete is all about. But I think we've noticed real quick what a couple rule changes can do, also what expansion can do. And if you say the Whip Snakes, I mean, look, they were missing a couple huge pieces throughout the entire season. Continuity was definitely an issue. Also, I think other teams got better through the draft, etc., throughout this past season. I would say that unless we're going to expand again to another team or two next year, I don't think the Whip Snakes are going anywhere. I think if those guys all come back healthy, forget also Joe Nardella, their starting faceoff guy, wasn't there this year. One of Joe's strengths is transition. So with the shot clock being what it was, maybe that would have made a difference. But, not having Brad Smith, Earhart was in and out of the lineup. I mean, Dunn was in and out of the lineup. That's massive. Their starting goalie, who's arguably on track to be the goalie of the year this year, not playing because he got hurt. So, no, I don't think the Whip Snakes are going anywhere, Hutton, but I'd be interested. The only way I would say that is if we expanded again and they lost a couple guys to that kind of expansion draft.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, injuries just was the story of their season. I'm a Ravens fan, and to me it was like, I know you are too, Beast, and I think that's kind of what it was last year. Like, all these injuries pile up, and it's tough to win when you're dealing with injuries. I don't think they had their. I think this last game was one of like the few that they had all of their starters in the lineup. And even then they weren't 100%. You don't know how 100% Earhart was. Rambo dealing with the hand and
Plus,
stuff.
there's like I said, their starter faceoff guy and starting goalie aren't playing.
Yep.
And they lose by 3 to the defending champs,
Yep.
who have a very good shot at winning the whole thing. So. Sides, do you think this is over? Do you think this spells doom for the Whips?
I don't know. I love rooting for the Whip Snakes. Some of my buddies that I've played with in the past are still playing with them, and I think of the Whip Snakes like I think of the Patriots. And love a good dynasty. I'm a Patriots fan. You guys are using the football reference, and I root for dynasties, and I love seeing them win. I love seeing dominance over extended period of times, and I love that they kind of came into the existence of the PLL and just put their stamp on it, and it that kind of be the best Maryland Terps mentality. And as we keep getting deeper and deeper into the existence of the PLL, you're seeing less of those original identities of the league.
Yes.
Where it was the Whip Snakes, Maryland, it was Chrome, Duke, it was Redwoods, Notre Dame. And it's slowly becoming more and more eclectic, which is awesome.
Yes.
But I think this core of Maryland guys, you have Chaney, you have Earhart, you have Burnlor in the cage, you have Dunn. There's a couple younger Maryland guys they have. I know Keegan Khan was playing this year. I love that identity aspect, and I don't want to see it go away. Which is I don't want to say it's over, but it's just I can see kind of the writing on the wall, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you what. The Chrome are going to have Brendan O'Neill next year. Duke. And Maryland will absolutely have another 4 or 5 guys coming in the league because they always do, and they might end up at the Whip, so who knows. But I want to talk a little bit more about the Water Dogs because this team looks fantastic. Keenan McCardle had 8 points. They can score in bunches. If Wardo is playing like himself in the cage, and I mean they have Courier, they have Goldbrick it does a great job with their prevent on the faceoffs, and like I said, their counter punch. Them and the Cannons have such an elite level counter transition punch after a faceoff concession that it's just like you have to stun that. If you don't stun that, then you really don't have a chance to beat these guys. And I don't think their defense gets nearly enough love because their offense is so good. But they are so good at balls on the ground or Wardo has the ball off a GB after a save, and that ball is in the attack stick in like 4 seconds. It's preposterous. And they have so many good two-way middies that they can get you if you run off the field.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Obviously their offense is elite. They've been able to, make the most of this face-off rule. Obviously it benefited them, when they didn't have Withers. So, the credit to Coach Copeland for kind of coming up with the prevent. But I think it starts and ends with Dylan Ward. I mean, he's had at least 14 saves in all of his starts, except for that first one against Atlas when he got pulled. So he might have been close to that. And they haven't lost a game with him in net this year. So I think that says a lot about him, and obviously we know what Dylan Ward is, but somehow he's still flying under the radar, I think. We think about Michael Sowers and Kieran McCarl and what they do for this offense. But they have so many guys on the offensive side of the ball. But their defense, I think, is what is going to get them to the championship and continue. Obviously, they had to score a lot to beat the Whips and still gave up, 12 goals there. But I just think that Dylan Ward gives them that game-breaking ability where he is able to kind of just shift the momentum so many times, making big saves. And that's what makes them scary. We'll get to our game picks a little bit later. I'm kind of on the fence with this Cannons Water Dogs one just because of the fact that you do have, playoff Dylan Ward, who's done it, not only in the PLL but the NLL as well. And it's a scary thought when you have him in net and you have to go play him.
I love shouting out Zach Currier because I think he's one of the most underrated players in the PLL. The things that he does between the lines that aren't necessarily showing up on stat sheets. He, like you mentioned, Greg, earlier, that he went 20 of 21 facing off last time they played the Cannons. And I just pulled up a tweet that our boy Dan Arestia had, which I thought was just awesome. Just shining on how well-rounded and great of a player Zach Currier is. The tweet reads, "With the PLL regular season over, it's time for the 2023 edition." Oh, this is 2022, actually. I tried to search his Twitter, but I couldn't find it. But this is 2022, but the point remains. It's Zach Currier had Zed Williams points, Brian Costabile goals, Marcus Holman assists, Lyle Thompson shooting percentage, CJ Costabile plus JT Giles Harris ground balls, and Rylan Reese caused turnovers. It's ridiculous.
He's a freak, man. He's such a freak.
He's literally, lacrosse's Swiss Army's knife, and for him to be doing it just so consistently, what you're going to get out of him, which is awesome. And he is what's going to, we're talking about next week's preview in a little bit. I think, he's so important for that midfield unit because you don't need him to score so many goals now with how deep their midfield is. And, I just really wanted to shout him out for just being he didn't win any awards, but, he's definitely the unsung hero of the PLL.
No, absolutely. And the Water Dogs dealt with a lot of injuries this year, too. We don't really talk about that. I mean, Sabia was out a lot. They had a lot of offensive guys go down with injuries. Jack Hanna was one of them. I'm trying to think. Oh, Conrad, I think, was out for a little bit. And they're just able to plug and play, a lot of different guys, which I think credit to Copeland, what he's been able to do. But like you said, Courier's always there. He's the one constant for them. And you saw in the bubble when he got injured with the concussion, they had, their worst season. Obviously, it was, their first season. But, when he's in the game, he's going to be a difference maker no matter whether it shows up on the stat sheet or not. And, yeah, I'm glad you shouted him out because he is the engine that makes this go. He was an early MVP pick for me, a long shot earlier in the season. He didn't put up the numbers and really have the story to kind of go with it. But I'm sure that, there's a lot of people in that locker room that think he's their MVP. So it's kind of telling, too, that the Water Dogs had the fewest amount of award nominees. And I think that's just because they are such a team that
they love that.
It's like they don't care. They want to win another championship.
Yeah, they love that. They love being under the radar. Dylan Ward's like, why are you guys bringing me up?
Well, fellas, let's move on to the last game of our quarterfinal weekend. Last game for us to talk about. It's Redwoods versus Chaos, 15-9. Never really a game. I think it was 10-2 at one point, 8-2. when I flicked it on earlier in the day last weekend. But Redwoods to me, man, it's a Jekyll and Hyde. They I don't want to say snuck their way into the playoffs because they were the 4 seed, but they down the stretch had a couple, I think 2 or 3 overtime wins that put them in that position. Which in this league, you flip those the other way, who knows, right? So they were able to pull out those wins, and they come into this playoffs pissed off and just absolutely take it to the chaos.
I can tell you as a Redwoods alum, this is just in the DNA. And as long as Nat St. Laurent is the head coach of the Redwoods, this will always be who they are, which is it doesn't matter if we're down by 1. It doesn't matter if we're down by 12. We are never out of the game because we are going to fight like dogs. And you saw it in the championship game when we played in 2019. It looked like we were absolutely getting pumped. And all of a sudden, we have a lead with like 20 seconds left. And this is what the Redwoods do. Now, you said Jekyll and Hyde, though, and we saw that in this game. I know the score, you're like, oh, wow, it wasn't that close. They were up by 10 at halftime. They got outscored 6-2 in the second half. And I think the real story here was it looked like in the first half, Blaze Reardon just wasn't seeing the ball. It was very awkward. It was weird to see him struggle on shots that he would usually save. I also think that the Redwoods did a phenomenal job of getting the ball inside to Wes Berg, who had 7 points. Wes Berg was who he's always been, and I'm glad he's getting the credit he deserves because he's a phenomenal player. But I think the biggest story in this game was Jack Kelly. Jack Kelly was over 70% on saves. It was a battle of the 2 Team USA goalies, and Jack Kelly was legendary vintage Jack Kelly. He was making straight up saves, like from deep, behind the back goal. Like there was a couple shots you'll see, cutter across the middle. I think it was Byrne on one of them, behind the back shot, and Jack was there waiting for it. I mean, that is a guy who has studied who he's going against, and he was fully prepared. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon in this game.
Yeah, and he never let the chaos get in rhythm. I think that's that was the story of it. It always felt like I was watching that game, and I went back and rewatched it, and I felt like the chaos actually had some good opportunities in that first half, despite only having 2. But he was blanking them, and then they were going the other way with it. Owen Grant, I think, is another guy that's been an X factor for them too. It's funny, when I saw the roster, they were having 3 long poles. I was like, I don't know about this. I thought they'd maybe go with an offensive guy. But all their 3 long poles, made a difference in this game, and obviously the defense is playing really, really well too in front of Kelly. So I will get to our game picks a little bit later. I still think they could be due for a letdown, but credit to John Grant Jr. for kind of reinventing the offense, because they didn't really reinvent it as much as we thought they would in the beginning of the season, and still managed to pull out some wins. But I felt like that first Cannons Redwoods game was really a turning point where they got Cole Kirst in the lineup. They got a few other guys, kind of Nakai running some offensive reps. Hopefully he gets healthy. And even though they lost that game to the Cannons by a couple goals, I was like, this team actually looks pretty good, despite the result. And then they went and played Chaos and lost by 2 when they probably should have beat them as well. And then they come back and they beat the Cannons in that overtime victory. So they've been trending on the upward. I think they had a few letdowns, with the Chrome, kind of played at their level, even though they won that game too. But like you said, it's kind of been one side of the coin for them. It's tough to see which Redwoods team will get, but I thought that was very encouraging. I was completely wrong on that game. I thought Chaos were gonna win, by at least a couple goals, and they got blown out. So credit to Nat St. Laurent and those Redwoods teams. I don't think they're gonna go down easy against this Archers team, despite what we saw the last time they played.
No, I think their offense, like you said, is clicking. I think Jack Kelly is vintage Jack Kelly. And Owen Grant is a massive difference maker. And we were saying this, Sibes, remember during the draft,
Totally.
I was telling you guys, this guy he's the next Brody Merrill, in my opinion. And I know people are like, whoa, pump the brakes. No, I'm not. I did CAA games. I did broadcasts on him. I've been watching this kid for a couple of years now. This kid's special. And he is going to give them a completely different look. And he's going to add a whole different dimension to their transition game and their GBs in between the arcs. That's going to be huge. And I think that is something that they've been missing. And I think that when you look at a team that has been very attack-centric on offense, their midfield hasn't been producing like they would like. If you have a pole with Owen Grant's skill set and you have a defense in front of Jack Kelly playing the way they do, I think that's going to be a big difference maker, especially in this final run. And who knows how many wins that could have made a difference for if he was healthy at the beginning of the season.
And I think lastly, just to round out this point on the Redwoods, I think that if I told you going into this game that Ryder Garnsey and Rob Pennell would have 0 goals and the Redwoods would win this game, you guys would probably say I'm crazy. But I think that's the sign of a good team and a sign of a team that's clicking on the way to the playoffs where, it's not like Ryder and Rob shot like 0 for 15 combined. Ryder took 3 shots and Rob Pennell had 2 shots, I think, right? They're letting the game come to them.
Offense.
Totally. Yeah. They're moving the ball around. Who's got the hot hand? Westberg has the hot hand. Let's feed the beast and just let him eat. And next week, who knows? Berg might be taken out of the equation. They're not going to slide off him. Then another player will step up, and that's a sign of a good team, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is why, we'll get to our picks later, but trends, you have to look at none of that when it comes to playoff lacrosse. Or in sports in general, you could argue. But like playoff lacrosse, all the awards have been announced. No one's getting bonus checks. Now it's strictly about what are you going to do in order to get to the next game. And the only paychecks you're getting now is if you make it to the championship. So what do I have to do? And Ryder Garnsey's been around long enough now. And I've argued Rob Pennell is at his peak because he has the perfect combination of where he's still young enough to do everything he wants to do physically, and he's now played long enough where he's seen everything he's going to see, and he is at the pinnacle of his career right now. And he understands, I don't have to take these extra shots. This is working. And I think, as long as guys keep to that and no one plays outside themselves. Look at Jules Henningberg. I hope he's still healthy. I know he had a little bit of a knee scare there. I actually texted him during the game, don't you dare get hurt right now. But if everybody's healthy and everybody believes, if they watch this film from this past week, they should feel really good about what they can do because this team can be special if everyone stays healthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, before we get to our picks for next week's semifinals, actually, one thing I wanted to just bring up to round off the quarterfinals talk is, what did you think about, I know it's always at Gillette, or it has been in recent memory, what did you think of the games there? I know that they have kind of a deal with the Kraft Group and their investors in the PLL, but we went from so many kind of cool, smaller facilities where it just looks so much better on TV and on the crowd, and we're not at the point in lacrosse where we're going to pack out these giant football stadiums. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Playing in it, it feels weird when there's a big stadium. It's like when Ohio State used to play in the shoe. I used to be like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah. You play maybe for the spring game when everyone's walking in for football, but other than that, it was like depressing. Mm-hmm. I think now it's the same thing. I would rather see them like New England Revolution Stadium or MLS Stadium.
The Revs actually play. But what if they did it at like?
Oh, do they play at Gillette?
The Revs play, but like doing it at like Boston College's football stadium, which is
Boston College has a pretty cool setup, even their lacrosse field.
Yeah, I think that'd be sweet to be in Boston, not down in Foxborough.
That's the other thing too. Is look, nothing against Pats fans. Sorry, side, dude. Foxborough sucks, man. Unless you have a hotel room in the little village that was created outside of Gillette Stadium, and you want to make a weekend of it with somebody, it's not fun, and especially for players because you'd finish your game, you'd be like, dude, I want to go to the city for a little bit.
Let's Uber into Boston.
Yeah, let's Uber into Boston a bunch of idiots. I know. I agree with you. I would like to see, dude. I think the semis they should put these quarterfinals. I liked it at Red Bull Stadium the first year. I think having it in Peter Barton, saving Peter Barton for the playoffs would be legendary. But I know you're also flirting with the idea of what if Trevor's not playing because he's a huge draw in his hometown. So I would rather them stick with the smaller venues. But I understand, you got an investor there and you got to make him happy.
Totally.
Yeah, to me, it's like I went to it last year, and it just there weren't that many people, and I do credit them. I think the idea of having it on Labor Day was a better idea than having it on a Saturday or Sunday of Labor Day weekend, because I do think maybe you get people that are like, oh, I don't really have any Labor Day Monday plans. I feel like a lot of people do stuff Saturday, Sunday more than they do Monday. but maybe do it in a spot that's like, I don't know, that's maybe more of a touristy attraction. So maybe you get people coming in, like want to go for a Labor Day weekend, as opposed to like what we said, Foxborough. It's not really a Labor Day weekend tourist attraction. So I think that's where like maybe get a little bit more creative with that. Maybe it's maybe you choose DC, or even like I know Philly's been doing great with the championship, but I feel like Philly would then show out a little bit more, even though that I'm not saying that's necessarily like the tourist destination either. But like Philly, you're going to get a good crowd no matter what. So why not pack it for 3 games as opposed to one? But yeah, to me, it's like it's tough to see like the smaller crowds. I do realize too though, like TV is like the big thing, and to me, it's like as long as the TV numbers are doing well, like we want the obviously, especially with home markets, the crowds to get bigger, but. I think it will come as long as more people keep tuning in on their TV.
Yeah, you're also messing with the end of people's summers, Labor Day. Like, I like the idea of Labor Day becoming like something known for PLL, similar to how Memorial Day is for the NCAA. I can dig that. People have their cookouts, they're sitting there, they throw PLL on. I dig it. But you're not going to get people in the seats that way. I don't think people are going to want to spend their Labor Day, especially when the kids have to go to school the next day, driving down to fill up those seats. So it'll be an interesting thing to see what we do moving forward with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'll even say like with Memorial Day, like I want to get back to one of these Memorial Day weekends, but I haven't been in a long time either because I'd rather go to the beach, and throw it on my TV or throw it on my phone and stuff and watch the game that way. So yeah, I think I forget what podcast I heard this. Someone was saying you're not just competing with NFL and MLB, like
Competing with the
lacrosse. You're
beach.
competing with the beach and the grill. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
I
always
can
gonna be a
tell
little
you
bit
with
tough.
2 kids now, you're definitely competing with that. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, before we get to the picks for the semifinal games, let's quickly run through the awards and shout out some award winners from the ceremony last weekend. Tom Schreiber, as expected, just cleaned up. He won MVP, he won the Leadership Award, and he won the Midi of the Year. Marcus Holman comes home with the Attackman of the Year, and Eppel wins Defensive Player of the Year for the first time in his career. Big congratulations there. Blaze Reardon keeps the Goalie of the Year title, and Mike Earhart is a 5-time long stick Midi of the Year. Trev takes home Faceoff Athlete of the Year. Latrell Harris, he won the George Boyardi Hard Hat Award. Tucker Dordovic, Rookie of the Year. Coach of the Year, no surprise, Brian Holman. Sportsmanship Award of the Year is Zed Williams. And the Humanitarian Award, Eric Law. And the Jimmy Regan Teammate Award, Cole Kurse, to round it out, which I think super impressive as a rookie to win the Teammate Award. Coming into a new locker room, especially not playing right away. He's definitely kind of captivated that Redwoods team, and they're rallying around him. So that's awesome to see for him. Shout out to Cole and the whole Kurse family. But, fellas, any other surprises to you, or do you think that they're all kind of status quo?
Yeah, I mean, nothing was surprising. I think, Schreiber was the MVP this year. I mean, he played absolutely bananas. And you could argue, there was definitely an argument for Holman, but I think that Tom Schreiber was by far the best player in the world, and he was the best player on the best team. So kudos to him. His speech, by the way, if you haven't seen it, check it out on YouTube. It was absolutely incredible. He's a man of few words, but when he does speak, everybody listens, and rightfully so. I think the Rookie of the Year award, you could have argued for Sisselberger, but the same reason that Trevor wasn't, they made Trevor a finalist for the MVP, and I thought that was just like, what are we doing here? Like, the guy is 80% with 1,000,000 ground balls. You know he's not going to win it because faceoffs don't matter anymore. So you nerfed him. You had to nerf the Rookie of the Year. You couldn't give the Rookie of the Year to Sisselberger. So both those guys got screwed. But Dordovic was an obvious pick. And, other than that, I don't think anything was surprising. I thought it was all very well deserved, especially, like you said, the Coach of the Year, Holman, and what he did.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I kind of leaned Holman after that 7-point game, for MVP maybe, but like you're splitting hairs between him and Schreiber. And obviously, what Schreiber's able to do from the midfield is really impressive too. Like, it's not just like he's not just a attackman like getting all these goals. He's like literally the quarterback from the midfield. I did think Ethan Rawl maybe should have deserved LSM over Earhart. Love Earhart. It's crazy that he's been a 5-time winner and deservedly so. But I did think he missed a few games and Raw has just been a game changer for the Cans too. So he could have easily maybe won Rookie of the Year as well. I definitely think Dordovic deserved that. Dordovic kind of tapered off a little bit in the middle of the season, but like finished strong, started like no other, and he's going to be a solid pro for a long time. So I wouldn't have changed that, but I do think Raw could have deserved a little bit more recognition. So that would be my only thing. Flip him for LSM, but I'm arguing against Earhart, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer and rightly so, 5-time award winner. They might have to change the name of the LSM award to him and Brody Merrill at this point.
No, all great points. All great points. Well, without further ado, the long-awaited preview for the semifinals of the PLL Championship. We have some big-time matchups, and these will be this coming up weekend out in Long Island at Hofstra. Great venue, the Dutch Dome for lacrosse. They definitely pack it out. You have the kind of horseshoe stands, and I know Long Island, we all know is a super hotbed. You're going to get a bunch of kids coming out supporting those guys. It's always a great atmosphere when they have the NCAA quarterfinals there. So excited to see these games. The first game we have on Sunday, September 10th, will be the Archers versus Redwoods. The 1 seed off a bye versus the Redwoods, who, like we mentioned, took care of business last week in Foxborough. This is a very lopsided money line for the game. Archers at -180, Redwoods +140. They're getting Archers -1.5 at -130. Over/under sitting at 24.5. I think this question comes up in all sports, with football especially when there's a bye, like the rest versus rust argument. Does it matter at this point of the season? How are you guys feeling about this game? Are you leaning towards a certain way, betting-wise? How are you guys feeling?
I can tell you from experience, especially in lacrosse, with the pro game. In the MLL, when the games were like way longer, the season was longer, it was way more grueling. You got a bye week, it was glorious. Because if you go out there feeling close to 100% in a playoff game in the pros, you feel like you're magic. In this, I don't know if it makes that much of a difference. I think for them, it's just a chance. If anybody's dinged up, I know Schreiber's been a little dinged up throughout the year. Grant Ament can always use a week off. So I think for them, being healthier was more important. And they got a chance to watch this Redwoods team with Owen Grant, get a chance to study him a little bit more and see what's up there. I think Jack Kelly's going to make sure that they're a little bit more selective about their shooting. And it's going to be an actual real face-off matchup. You got the second best face-off guy in the league in Sisselberger versus TD, who's the third. And it'll be a great matchup again. So we're going to get to see a real lacrosse game, which will be cool. Hutton, I know you were saying you're leaning towards the -1.5 for the Archers.
Yeah, I'll tell you why too. Like I like the Archers to beat the Redwoods. I was really impressed with the Redwoods last weekend. I've bet them in a few spots that they were very undervalued. Cannons was a prime example in that second game. Bet them on the spread end money line for that. But I like the Archers -1.5 because I think the Archers can win by margin. They did it last year in the playoffs against them. They did it earlier this season. I think the Redwoods are going to be more competitive. But I still think the Archers have too many offensive pieces that they can expose what's been a really good Redwoods defense. And I think they can get Jack Kelly moving a lot, which is kind of how you have to beat him. He's been one of the best goalies in the world at one point, and he's been playing like it in recent weeks too. So not taking anything away from them. But then on the flip side, I think the Archers defense can neutralize this Redwoods offense. It's going to really come down to the Redwoods midfield. We saw, the Chaos were able to shut down, for the most part, Pennell and Garnsey, but they weren't able to stop their Redwoods offensive midfielders who are very good with their shots, taking high-quality opportunities and stuff. I think, though, the Archers' defense with their short stick defensive middies, hopefully Luttrell's healthy enough. I think he popped up on the injury report, so he might be out. But they still have, two other good short stick defensive middies. They got guys that can go both ways. I just think it's going to be a lot to handle. I think it's going to start out as a close game, and I think you'll see the Archers eventually pull away. The reason I like the -1.5, though, is because I do think they can win, and to me, I'm trying to limit as much juice as possible. So, I could bet them on the money line for the hefty price, I think, of -180.
Yeah.
But if I think they're going to win, I feel like I might as well bet them to cover the 1.5 point spread. And if I was a little bit more hesitant about it, I just wouldn't bet it at all, is my opinion. And I'd say if you're a Redwoods, on the Redwoods side and you like the Redwoods, sure they might lose by 1, but there's a plus 150 out there. Like if you think they have a chance at winning the game or covering the spread, bet them to win. Or you could split up your unit in half too and do a little bit on the spread, to save yourself if they do lose by 1, and then have a nice payout if they do win. So that's kind of how I approach betting. I rarely bet a 1.5 point underdog, and I rarely bet a favor on the money line just because it's always a lot of juice with how these sportsbooks set the lines.
Yeah,
That's why we bring you on.
The last year or two, I've made a living off of the plus 1.5. But this season has been, honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with guys playing prevent, and I think that's clock. It's been bonkers.
It's been less close games, and even the close games you see, it's sometimes the underdogs pulling off the upset.
Yeah, it's
too,
all over
so.
the place.
Yeah. So
I like the idea. See, I'm going to have to find. I personally think Latrell Harris is worth a goal. So I want to see if he's healthy. I'm going to need to wait until that injury report's official. If he's in the game, then I would probably bet. See, I just know the Redwoods are going to come out and be ready for this game. The idea of betting the 1.5 is really scary to me. I feel good about betting the plus 1.5 for the Redwoods because I feel so deeply that this is going to be a 1-goal game. But like you said,
that's where I would say you split your unit then.
Yeah, and that's what I might do. Honestly, I might go with the money line with the Archers, and then the other half of it I might go plus 1.5.
You're gonna try to split the
no. I would split. I would do Redwoods. Go a little bit on the Redwoods money line. If you think they have a chance at winning, and then save yourself a little bit if they do lose by 1. That's what I would do, because to me, if I don't like the Redwoods in this game, but if I did, I'm looking at that plus 150, and I say this all the time, like it's, even though I'm saying here I'm making the case for the Archers, but I really don't think any PLL team should be more than plus 130 on the money line. And when I see a plus 150 and it's for a team that I like or think I have a chance, like that's when I'm usually chomping at the bit. Now, again, I'm on the Archer side this time, but that's why I'm doing the minus 1.5. I think they can potentially blow them out. But the Cannons Redwoods earlier example, when it was their second game, I think the Redwoods were like plus 135, plus 140, and I'm like, that game they lost by 3, but that game was way closer than the score indicated. So what I did is I split my unit on them and bet them plus 1.5. So I wasn't sweating too much when it was going into overtime, but ended up paying off. So I just think in the long run, like the less juice you can bet, like the better you are for the long run. Because we do see a lot of close games in the PLL, but it's still like not as many as you would think. Like,
yeah.
And that's kind of how I do. Like, it helps me to kind of determine whether I really like a team or not. If I'm like, oh, I think this team, might cover the 1.5 point spread, but I don't know if they're going to win. Like, usually I'm just staying off that game. I'm probably going to do that with Cannons Water Dogs. It's just like, I think the Cannons will cover that 1.5. It's nice, but minus 160 is just a lot to lay. So that's kind of where
I said, Sibes, that's not splitting the uprights. I could be right on both. If I went money line for half,
that's why you have to split that's why it's splitting your uprights. That's why it's splitting the uprights. You got to hit both. If you
I see what you're saying. I thought you. I'm sorry. I thought you meant hedging the bet either way.
No. You got to kick it right down the middle. You got to get a 1-goal win.
Middle, boy.
Yeah.
Well, I never split my units. I mean, I'm an all or nothing person. Anybody who's talked to me for 5 minutes knows that. But I think, like I said, if I'm leaning towards the plus 1.5 in this game. If Latrell Harris is not healthy, that might change my decision. But I think I might be leaning towards the Redwoods plus 1.5 in this.
No,
tell me,
think they're either going to lose by 1.
I'm telling you, if you bet them, if you bet them plus 1.5, just sprinkle a little bit for me on that Redwoods money line, because I feel like if you think they're going to cover that 1.5, you'll be happy you did when they pull off the.
That's such a great point, and I'm glad.
Just a little sprinkle.
No, it's such a great point. I'm glad you came on and broke that down, because, I mean, you give great arguments why you should bet both sides. And me personally, I'm addicted to the plus sign. Like, so if I see Redwoods at plus 1.5 and you're getting plus 100, you get the 1-to-1. Like, that's no brainer to me. And then you're absolutely right, because if you think they can cover plus 1.5, then you probably think they should at least go to overtime and then have a chance of winning. So why not sprinkle a little bit on the money line as well? And I think that's exactly what I will be doing this weekend. And
I'll give an example too on the flip side. Last week, I bet the Chaos minus 1.5, and I lost. But if I had bet them Chaos on the money line, I would have laid like minus 120. Instead, I bet just one unit. On at it was at plus 130. So I usually do a unit. I bet like if it's minus 120, I'll bet 1.2 units, and if it's plus money, I'll just bet one unit. So I ended up losing less money because I went that route, even though I completely was wrong. So that's the other thing too, is just kind of managing your risk long term is why I recommend that. So even like when you're losing, you're not losing as badly. That's if you bet like that though. If you're just betting a unit straight no matter what, then it doesn't matter as much because you're just lowering your payout one way or another.
Yeah.
No.
I'm also, you know what, Hutton, I'm going to have to wait, like I said, with the Latrell situation, but also because it's the Redwoods, I have to really look myself in the mirror and decide if I'm betting with my heart or not.
Yeah. That's
You know?
tough thing to
This
do.
has happened to me with
is.
the Redwoods in the past. I've completely bet with my heart. It's paid off and it's hurt me. So I gotta I gotta sit back and look at this because I agree. I mean, if you're being completely objective with absolutely no heart at all, then on paper you'd say, yeah, the Archers are absolutely can win this game by 2 goals for sure. Because like you said, their defense and their transition up the field can beat the Redwoods' transition defense to score goals.
Yeah, but
And,
it's the PLL too. Like anything
Yeah.
can happen.
And I'll say, if the Redwoods didn't play like they did last weekend, I'd be all over the Archers. I think they played inspired. I think right on paper you'd say, and I think that's why the market is what it is right now for the Archers so heavily money line. But I don't know. I like a good underdog story. In the history of the PLL, one seeds haven't had much success.
No, they haven't.
So who knows, right?
I'm pretty sure they haven't actually ever covered because the only one seed to advance was the Whip Snakes in 2020, and they still didn't cover. It was like a 3.5 point spread or 2.5 point spread against the Redwoods, and they won in overtime. So that's definitely a trend I'm going against this weekend, but it's definitely of note, and I don't know if that plays into the rest versus rust factor at all, but I think it just shows how competitive this league is, no matter if you're the 1 seed or the 4 seed or even the 7 seed.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great breakdown. You have some options to pick out there, listeners, of how you want to play this one, but we hope we gave you some good ones. Last game of the weekend will be Water Dogs versus the Cannons. On paper, I'm looking at DraftKings right now. It's a little bit more even. We have moneyline Cannons minus 110 versus Water Dogs minus 120, the favorite by a hair.
This
Water
game's going to be freaking awesome.
Yep. Water Dogs minus 1.5 at plus 125. Cannons plus 1.5 at minus 160. The over/under is a little bit higher at 26.5. Fellas, do you think it's gonna be a good old-fashioned shootout? I mean, the over/under, the total is looking that way. How are we feeling?
Dude, I don't think so. I think these are what are these? Are these the 2 best defenses in the league? Are these or the Water Dogs?
They're up there,
Oh
I
no,
think.
not the Archers, right? The Archers are the best defense in the league.
The Cannons have let up 119 goals. The Water Dogs have let up 118 goals. The only lower team is the Chaos at 116. Oh, no,
Okay.
Archers at 111.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, these are 2 very good defenses. I think that are both going to play prevent, and because they both play prevent, neither one of them might be fully equipped to score right off the faceoff. So I think what you're going to get is like this 90-second delay at least before the first goal of after a faceoff. So both goalies are playing very well, and both teams are very good at transition defense, just as good as they are at transition offense. So I'm thinking the under on this. I'm thinking that we're going to get like 24 or 25 goals in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on the under. Even though like it was funny the last time these 2 teams played, I was like, "There's no way this goes under." I think the total was 24.5. I was like hammering that over, and we only saw 20 goals. I think we'll see a little bit more than 20 goals this time around, but I think you laid it out. The best beast is that like these teams are going to be a little bit more conservative with their possessions because if you're a team that's not winning the faceoffs, you're gonna usually just kind of like take what you can get in transition. Usually like the Water Dogs and Cannons have been good at like scoring in transition, but now that they're both going to be playing the prevent, those opportunities aren't going to be really there as much. And then you're going to if you're going to bet the over here at 26.5, one, it's the highest total we've seen all season, tied for it. We had it last year, and we had it last week, and they did go over it last week as well. So, it's tough to go on and under with this Cannons team, but you got Dylan Moore in net for the Water Dogs, and Kirst has been playing out of his mind as well. I just have a hard time seeing this game. If it's going to be tight, I have a hard time seeing it go over 26.5. I think if it's going to go over, it's going to be a blowout, and I think you guys will all agree with me that it's not going to be a blowout. I don't think for either of these teams. So that's where I'm leaning on this is under 26.5. If I had to pick a team, I'd probably go Cannons, but you could probably talk me into either. So I'm going to avoid playing the side either way. There's just not enough value on either team. Both minus on the money line. You could play the Cannons plus 1.5, but then you're laying minus 160 for it. I feel like you could play, if you like a team in this, wait till the player props come out and try to play some overs on player props or unders on the team you think's going to lose. That's probably your better bet than playing the side on this one. But I'm with you. I think it's going to go under 26.5. That's a lot of goals. 27 is a lot of goals in this league, even though we've seen a lot, so far this season with the new face-off rules. I just don't think we're going to get there.
I love the storyline for this game because you have the defending champs versus the turnaround team of the year, and something's got to give. I like the Cannons here. I'm enough to bet them, maybe a little bit just to have some skin in the game, but we'll see. I think, Greg, question to you. We talk about both teams playing prevent. Do we even consider it prevent when Courier's going to win probably close to 85-90% of these faceoffs?
I don't know if he's going to or not. That's what's going to be interesting. If I'm the Water Dogs, if I'm Andy Copeland, right? The last time they lost a game when they played against the Cannons, that was the first time that they won faceoffs the whole season, and they lost. If I'm Andy Copeland, I'm sitting here in my laboratory, sitting here going, do we just put Eli up there, and on the whistle we both stand up and we just go like this?
Turn it into a hockey faceoff?
Dude, seriously. I would probably bat the ball at the Cannons and dare them to pick it up, because literally whoever picks the ball up first is going to lose this game. I'm telling you right now, if there was a prop bet, whoever wins the face-off battle in this game is going to lose, because both of these teams are built to lose the face-off and then counterattack. And that was the one time the Water Dogs didn't do it, and it cost them. So I'm fascinated, because it's not like, as good as Courier is, he's not a face-off man. So he doesn't have the skill set to reverse clamp, pick it up right away and sprint down the field, or even pinch and pop it, catch it on the left side of his body.
No, he's just going to grind for the ground ball.
Yeah. So he beats you up by letting you win the clamp. That's how he has won faceoffs in the past. So I'm fascinated to see what this looks. I mean, I really hope that we get some kind of clown show, because it'd just be entertaining. Imagine Courier just bats it on the whistle and just tries to keep batting it down the field and then scoops it at the arc. And now they got the ball. I feel like if anybody in the world could do that, it'd be him. But I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the under, and I'm looking at taking the money line for the Cannons. I think this will be a 1-goal game. I think this is going to be an overtime game, and I think Marcus Holman is going to seal the deal in overtime. That's the way I see this thing playing out. Marcus Holman or Drenner. That's the way I see this playing out.
Yeah, and minus 106, I think, is the lowest I've seen on FanDuel. And like I said, I'm not picking a side, but we saw the Cannons beat them 12-8 the last game. I'm not saying that's going to be indicative of what it's going to be this week, but I was very surprised that they made the Water Dogs the favorites in this game. I think they maybe considered the fact that Water Dogs, maybe with the Barstool connection, are going to be, probably seeing a lot more of the public money. Maybe that's why they did that. They thought they might get hit too hard on the others, if they flipped it the other way. But, the game is essentially still a pick 'em on the money line. I was still very surprised that they gave the plus 1.5 to Cannons. So I'm not going to bet it probably, but I'm with you, Greg. Bet that minus 106, Cannons money line. If you like them, that's a pretty good price for a team that hasn't lost a game in a while and just beat this team, a couple weeks ago.
That's what I'm saying. This minus 110 is pretty. I can't believe you're getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and then the under. That's probably the bet I'm making. It is going to be interesting. The thing that I think holds me back a little bit with the Cannons is both these teams have been really well coached this year, but Copeland is just so good at in-game adjustments that I know they've been watching film on this game all week, this last game, and he's already got a blueprint on how they're gonna be like, I'm with you. I don't think we'll see Courier go out and take every face off. I think they'll still run him on the wing, and it might be go brick versus Rawl, and they'll duke it out and see if anyone
LSM
can
face-off
score a pole
battle.
goal.
Give
Yeah,
the people what they want.
it's probably gonna happen.
I know.
We'll see.
I know. Well, be sure to tune into these games. If you're in the area, go check it out. Like I mentioned, Hofstra University is an awesome place to go watch these games and support the league and support the teams you have the most affinity to. But, fellas, that's our preview for next week. I'm excited to tune into these games and see where we were right, where we were wrong. Any last thoughts before we head out?
Player props aren't up yet, but check out those player props. I'm big on those. I always look at, I like to go back and look at, because the way they set these lines is they'll go and they'll look back at this past season and see, who's gone over what. Usually they're basing off their average, but you can really find some value on player props sometimes, and that's where I sometimes don't fear the juice. If the juice is, let's say it's minus 150, and that may seem a lot, go back and look at how many times they've gone over or under that. Sometimes you can still find value. Like, it might be minus 150 and it should be minus 200. Like, that's still value there. So definitely check out the player props. That's where I like to.
And Hutton, will you be posting anything on Action for this upcoming weekend in the games?
Yep, I'll have 2 game previews. Probably, I think on Friday is what I'm hoping to have them done. Usually do them right after like the injury reports and the final rosters come out. But yeah, we did pretty well last weekend. It wasn't our best weekend, but knock on wood, I haven't had a losing record this season. There's been a few times where I've lost a few units, but we've been doing pretty well this year, and a lot of that again is to do with the player props. So if I had to pick sides and totals and just sides and totals, I probably wouldn't be doing as well. So definitely check out the player prop markets.
Hell yeah, definitely check that out Friday when it drops on the Action Network. Check out Hutton's write-up. Greg, anything before we go?
Nope. Enjoy the weekend. It's going to be beautiful.
Hell yeah. Well, make sure, listeners, you are subscribing to Rise Up the podcast on Apple or Spotify, whichever you prefer. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the wonderful TorchPro YouTube channel. And that is episode 42 in the books, fellas.
See you guys in Long Island, the house that the New York Lizards built.
Hell yeah. Take care, fellas.